Welcome to They Might Be Self-Aware, your favorite AI-related podcast. I am Hunter Powers, joined by
the always self-aware Daniel Bishop.
Yo. I gotta stop saying yo. It's someone pointed out that I say yo too much, so I don't know. But I don't know what else to say.
Yo ho.
Yo ho ho. We're getting towards that.
When is International Talk Like a Pirate Day? We should do a whole episode.
Arr, mateys, we be sailing the AI seas. It be me, Captain Daniel Bishop.
Well, perhaps I know what your dream AI job is now, but why don't you give us a hint of what we're discussing today?
I am going to talk about my AI-related dream job. We're also going to talk about arguing with chatbots and some general clowning around.
Speaking of pirates, is comedy the last frontier for AI's self-consciousness and awareness?
I thought you were going to say speaking of clowns. You did not. Subversion of expectations, the core of good comedy. Speaking of comedians, I hear that someone's buying a Cybertruck, and we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the stainless steel rust spots thereupon.
I don't know who would buy one of those things. But the AI treadmill, are we too close to notice the progress that is happening? It is all up next, folks, because you are listening to...
They might be self-aware.
The last episode, you had asked me the question of what my perfect AI focused job in the vein of the new ethical researcher. And I think I had said basically the debater. I wanted to go in every day and just get into arguments with the AI. And you were going to reveal yours in this episode. Have you thought? Have you pondered?
Oh, no, I've still got it.
Restless Nights?
No, I've got it locked and loaded. And it comes from something that I saw online of where LLMs don't shine. I was talking last episode about where LLMs do shine, which is BSing a bunch of wine pairing notes for anything, whether it be food or podcast episodes or text messages or whatever. But where they apparently don't shine, and we were talking some about like, what is this self-awareness? Are they really there yet? I think the general consensus is still no. One place that LLMs decidedly fall flat, and I don't necessarily fault them because I think a lot of people fall flat there too, but it shows that we don't have this broad set of capabilities, is in that of humor. Have you ever asked ChatGPT to write you a joke?
It's really hard to get it to write a good joke. Really hard.
I've tried multiple sort of approaches, and like, here's a bunch of context, and what could we talk about in this kind of conceptual space? Give me like it doesn't even have to be like a knock joke, just like even a monologue that ends up being funny. LLMs don't have a sense of humor. They just don't.
Yeah, there's been actually some mild controversy around that. The best example I'm thinking of is there was a George Carlin special that was put out where, in theory, it was entirely written by AI, and they used an 11 Labs-like model, so it sounded like George Carlin delivering the material. But in reality, it was just a bunch of joke writers writing it because they couldn't get the AI to come anywhere close.
Yeah, for those of you listening, I made a super skeptical face when Hunter said that it was AI made George Carlin comedy. I'm like, it absolutely did not. Yeah, I've asked for it to kind of come up with some jokes or like even just, hey, give me a pun name surrounding this sort of concept. Some of them honestly fairly good in the like pun department. Most of it not great, and then definitely anything more comedically complex than that, straight up missing. Now, I don't know if it's because we haven't given embodiment to LLMs and they know about like slapstick comedy yet, for example, which is obviously the second highest form of comedy. The highest form of comedy is the Himalayan ganja mime.
Okay.
I'll let that sink in. But yeah, I don't think that we're there yet in terms of this extremely important aspect of the human psyche. You might be able to bring someone to tears or rage, but unless you can make someone laugh too, you're certainly not hitting that whole spectrum within the human experience.
I have the most success I've found with comedy is asking it to mimic. So if you take a joke that you like and you say, I want you to model the tone, the rhythm, the style of this joke, but now use that and apply it to this other topic. That kind of style transfer almost. It can do, but I guess the argument there is it's not really creating the humor. The humor was embedded in that original joke. It is just changing the subject.
Yeah, and style transfer is supposed to be something that LLMs are really good at, but there's something about, is it that you're just breaking expectations in specific kind of ways that LLMs can't grasp? Is it that they've been trained to give a straightforward answer to prompts in a pleasing way, but humor is not necessarily like in that same vector of I'm giving a pleasing response?
I think it probably is, right? Because LLMs are predicting the most likely next thing to be said based off their giant corpus, and humor is often about flipping that on its head and saying the thing that you were least likely to come up next, but has some truth in it when you really stop to think. That absurdity, that's often why we laugh. I never saw that coming. Ha 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 ha. And as I think about it a little bit, it's actually kind of true. And that's the nature of a joke. Now, I do wonder if we could now, fine tune a model specifically on humor. I bet we could.
Have you ever heard of Emo Phillips? It was
Yes.
really popular, like, frankly, a couple of decades ago. I think he tours with Weird Al now. I enjoy his particular brand of comedy.
Big Weird Al fan, are you?
I am a big Weird Al fan as well.
Did you watch the movie, the Daniel Radcliffe?
I have not yet. I really
hear
need
it's
to watch
good.
that.
It actually got really good reviews. It's on my list. It's kind of far down the list in full transparency, but it made it to the list.
Okay. So Emo Phillips has, besides a very unique vocal affectation, which
You want to do an impression?
I absolutely don't, has a lot of his jokes end up being what are called in linguistics garden path sentences, where you're being led down a path and you are meant to expect like how a sentence will end, and then it doesn't end that way. And it's almost like you're mentally tripping over a root on the path, and then there's the surprise of, oh wait, now I have to recontextualize the entire thing based off of what I just heard. And of course, explaining comedy makes it much better. So that's what some of his comedy is built around. And instead of the most up-to-date best large language models, I'm thinking back to like your GPT-2s or these other just like little recurrent neural network based, or just even a hidden Markov model based, like what is the next word that should show up here. And if you remember back in the very early days of AI text generation, if you look at 2 or 3 words in a row, it would be perfectly reasonable chunks of words. And maybe close to like a clause or even a sentence, it kind of holds together, but it clearly, there was no like coherence.
By the end of a paragraph, it had completely lost the topic.
Certainly by paragraph, let alone often, especially in very early days, by the end of a sentence. And that reminds me of this garden path sentence where like you have a sentence that starts off a certain way and okay, my brain and my experience as a human leads me to believe I know where this is going, and then it doesn't. And I don't think that I was laughing out loud from any of these things that I saw, but it was very reminiscent of this phenomenon that we have a name for that does have comedy sort of rooted in it, which is to say it's that subversion of expectations. Yeah. So yeah, I wonder if you could train an LLM to, instead of give the most pleasing answer, the most tuned to be like relevant, it would be to surprise in delightful ways.
I believe you could.
And that gets us to an AI clown, which I think is what we could all really align behind being a good thing that we could use, is, just a metal exoskeleton. It weighs 1.5 tons. It could crush your head like a grape, but it's wearing a fun little red nose and tells jokes at the circus. Because that way you really get to lean into the horror aspect to go with the comedy. It's a yin and yang, right?
I like
together.
it when
it's
they
a
get
Terminator with one of those fake roses that spritzes out the water.
The tiny car, when they drive around in the tiny car, and there's several of them in there. That's one of my favorite bits.
Right, and you could get a huge robot in there because it could like compact in to really fill up the space.
And apparently there is clown school. Like and there are well reputed clown schools that you can attend.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
I mean, I guess it makes sense that there would be them. You don't just, it's not just, it's your calling and like a witch out in the woods somewhere. You're like living alone for decades and then you come out, I've always been a clown. You have to go somewhere to learn clowning.
Steve-O of Jackass fame may have attended clown school, if I'm remembering my Jackass history correctly. TBD, but yeah. A famous clown school. I believe it's in Florida.
Amazing. Having grown up mostly in Florida, I get that.
Seems plausible. Checks out.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Now, speaking of funny clowns doing silly things, I think you had something that you wanted to share with us, Hunter? A confession, really, than a joke?
Well, I may have done a thing.
Did you buy another AI gadget?
Yes, but that's true pretty much every single week. There are multiple. I have one AI gadget right now that's tied up in customs.
Me too. I'm still waiting on my plod pin.
But yeah, now with this new administration and Elon taking he's going to take potentially a big position as the head of the Department of Government Efficiency,
which spells Doge, of course.
He's
also one of two people that will be in charge of the Department of Efficiency, which I think is
Vivek.
Yeah, at least we know that Elon had plenty of free time.
But Uncle Elon, we've been a little harsh on him as of recently, and I thought potentially to get back in his good graces, maybe I would purchase one of his so-called Cybertrucks, and I pick it up tomorrow.
Hunter,
yeah.
Well, have you seen all the videos that I have of them not being able to do truck stuff?
I'm aware
of them
of
being
this.
Objectively bad vehicles.
It's a very divisive vehicle. I've never had an EV. So let me tell you, this
is going to be your first one.
Yes.
Oh. What an intro.
Yeah, so I've never had an EV. I was interested by the Hummer EV. In fact, I was on like their early pre-order list.
Mm-hmm. They have a lot of ads right now. Like I'm seeing them everywhere.
I'm seeing them everywhere
They've got a crab walk mode.
Yes, they do have a crab walk mode. But the thing that I am most interested in more than EV is self-driving. That's the thing. And I know you've experienced it and you've kind of...
It's been promised for years and years, and it's
right around the corner. I want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, and I'm hopeful that this next year that we're on sort of the precipice of some groundbreaking, revolutionary advancements to self-driving. It's at least plausible. Far from guaranteed, but plausible that it could happen. Sure. And I do want to be in the quote unquote driver's seat of this. And I think unquestionably Tesla currently is the farthest ahead in commercial self-driving that you can go out.
Waymo is.
You can't purchase the Waymo taxi.
No, but you can take autonomous rides in one.
In certain
cities.
In a Tesla. In certain cities.
Okay, you can't do it in any of them in a Tesla.
Sure.
You can't say that they're the leader of
consumer.
Oh.
That I can purchase. I can't, if I could purchase the Waymo, I would purchase the Waymo. I can't purchase it. I can purchase the Tesla and experience it and see, is it crap or is it not crap?
I'm really curious. Please give me here in this public forum with everyone else your thoughts on what the self-driving is like in this thing. I want to hear about the vehicle in general and make sure not to close the doors too hard because apparently they'll explode. Treat it very, very carefully. But beyond that, you let me know how the self-driving is. I'm really curious to see.
I'm going to do this. There will be reports and first impressions and updates. I tend to be very harsh on things when I first experience them and then mellow over time. So yeah, we'll see, and hopefully it will continue to get better as AI advances. And Elon has his like giant training center, one of the largest now in the world. He's gonna It's gonna be incredible. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, so are you at least getting a wrap for it so that it doesn't rust?
I don't think I'm going to wrap it. I think I'm going to try to embrace the metal, but we'll see. We'll see how that evolves, how dirty it looks, how many fingerprints are on it, etc. Because then I have to care for the wrap, and I kind of just want to like let it be. And,
I think like
see what
rust
happens.
spots can give it a very cool like camo sort of effect,
or it could look horrible. That patina, right? That's where we want
right
a beautiful patina.
They should
wine
do
pairing.
a copper instead of a steel exterior, so that like over time it gets that kind of Statue of Liberty color.
And I live in a
beautiful,
very salty environment where salt water is regularly raining from the skies above, as I am next to the ocean. So, and by the way, and it's going to stay outside. It's not coming into the garage because it's monstrous.
Now I'm really curious to see what your thoughts are on this in a while.
Yeah, and I have seen some reports that it's maybe not the best idea to keep it outside, not because of the steel, just for other issues of too much water can apparently potentially wreak some havoc on the electronics, etc. But
I'm sure Elon thanks you for your sacrifice.
The Department of Government Efficiency will not be taking down. They might be self-aware now. I've made my tithings. Mm-hmm. Yes, to the Uncle Elon. And
we were talking about AI
safe.
welfare and so on last episode. So now you're saying, don't just be nice to the AI, be nice to the guy who's in charge of the AI, because he could come get you too.
Yes, I think
that's
exactly
a very
what
pragmatic view, unfortunately. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. So Uncle Elon, as you keep calling him, I prefer the term Palpatine, but that's just the Star Wars nerd in me. He's got a whole heap of GPUs, and so does Mark Zuckerberg. I don't like shortening it to Zuck. I don't care for that name. But anyway, Mark Zuckerberg, also of Meta/Facebook fame, has a gazillion GPUs that I think it's like 100,000 something GPUs.
And they're all the H100s. That's still what everyone
really
wants.
Big ones, and so they're training presumably Llama 4 on that. I've seen a couple of things recently where, especially from alleged, maybe it's insider kind of murmurings, or it could just be the rumor mill or whatever, but around the training of a presumed GPT-5 from OpenAI, that maybe it's not going to be another huge leap forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think Ilya...
GPT-3 to 4 was light years. I mean, like this incredible step forward. And frankly, from GPT-4 to the latest, looking at like being able to do projects and all this agentic stuff with your Claudes and Mistrals and so on, and OpenAI as well, we've seen a lot more capability come out in the LLM space in the last year and a half, right?
Absolutely.
But we haven't seen, especially like, I'm going to say in the last year, another huge leap forward. We've seen more incremental improvements.
What about Sora?
I'll let you know when I see it. There are more improvements. There are more models of varying sizes, open and closed alike, that have been coming out that are really helping push boundaries. There's like architecture tweaks. No, we added this new thing that increases the context window, or now it can be easier to do agentic, or RAG is getting more implemented into this RAG retrieval augmented generation, finding the appropriate bits to use as context. So all of these are getting like more and more integrated into this ecosystem of capabilities that LLMs use as like, that's their beating heart. But we haven't seen, wow, this one now is 10 times smarter than the last one. Some of this could be its compute power. Some of this very much could be, and there's been a lot of digital ink already spilled of, they already ingested the whole internet. There isn't 10 times more text to look at.
They finished the internet. They're now just generating fake text to train on. That's well known as well.
And there's only so much more juice to squeeze there, I think. I really believe that what we're going to see is its new architectures or new agentic capabilities or more of these other improvements that are going to push the bar forward. But I remember talking a long time ago, those of you who are real sleuths try to figure out which episode or episodes it was, that GPT-4 was the last big shift that anyone would be able to tell was a big shift. Because GPT-4, for enough people, enough of the time, is already so powerful and good and smart and capable and this and that and whatever, all these other superlatives, that if it did get 10 times smarter, we might not notice. We might think it's 1.5 times better. Oh, for long context problems, it got better under these circumstances. Isn't that 10 times better? I don't know, it's better, right? Like, I think we're getting into that realm where that level of intelligence, and I use the term somewhat broadly, can't be easily quantified by people as this was obviously bad and dumb, now it isn't. Now there are benchmarks, some of you might be saying. There's a whole bunch of benchmarks out there to prove how good an LLM is. Some of them are on question answering, like multiple choice question answering. People have said, hey, here's GPT-4, and it went up against like a bar exam's worth of things, or the SATs, or this or that. And there's a bunch of other just like LLM benchmarks out there. People are coming up with harder and harder math problem sets. There is a new set that actually just came out that is supposed to be extremely hard. The top models are performing 2% on this.
This is the math one?
This is the math one. Frontier math is what it's called. And so on other benchmarks, leading AI systems are over 90%, which is really great. And you know what? They're a lot better than I'd be. And now there is a new benchmark that is doing 2% at it, like depending on which one you put in, the best of them. In the article about this that we went over, it says these aren't the kinds of problems that can be solved with basic memorization or pattern recognition. They often require hours or even days of work from human mathematicians, and they cover a wide range of topics, from computational number theory to abstract algebraic geometry. Well, shoot, I'm going to score a very solid 0% on all of that. And if we have any LLMs that currently do 2% versus then 4, 8, 15, 71, whatever, most people, in most cases where they'd be interacting with an LLM, even if it is more broadly capable, not just on math, but that it can step by step think through and do all these things. If I ask ChatGPT in a new chat with no previous context, I want to make a mac and cheese and include scorpions in it. And it's like, sure, man, I'll make you a scorpion mac and cheese recipe. Here you go. Make sure to get the ones that aren't venomous. That from GPT-4, the original implementation, and GPT-5 that does 91% on this new math, set, whatever. The average person won't know or care, frankly, about that difference. And so I think we're getting to a point where that it's becoming too hard to understand that it even is getting better outside of giving it specific capabilities or a new benchmark to like be optimized against. I don't know. What do you think about all that?
I think I have a lot of thoughts.
Let's hear them.
Let's start. So one part of the thing that I wonder about is, so if you always upgrade to the latest and the greatest, you buy every iPhone every single year, which I may or may not do. It often doesn't feel like anything has changed when you get the new phone. And it's only when you go back 3 years and try the phone from 3 years ago and you're like, oh my gosh, like this was the experience 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like this is horrible. It's so slow. I can't do these things that I wanted to do. It doesn't last nearly as long, etc. So I wonder if part of it is that we are so close to it, we aren't seeing the improvements. Now, again, I'm skeptical about that, but I'm interested in it. Another point or consideration is around Orion, the newest model from OpenAI, currently in the preview, O1 preview state. There's a discussion about whether that was meant to be GPT-5, and because of this very thing that it doesn't, the average person using it doesn't see it as this 10x improvement over 4.0 or whatever. It just seems like it's maybe a little bit better.
It has a whole thinking set of intermediary steps where OpenAI is able to charge you for more tokens.
Yeah, that maybe,
which is great for them.
Maybe that's part of the, like, we hit this wall with our current approach to building these large language models, and maybe large language models in general. They had a potential, and we are eking out all of the potential.
Right.
Ilya, the former CTO of OpenAI, came out last week and said this very thing. He's like, we've hit the limit. There's basically almost no more gains to be had. And when you just think about it logically, the fact that we've ingested all of the information that we had to ingest, and we're now literally making up fake training data to try to get it to go even further. We're having it write fake books and have fake conversations. And then we'll use that as the training data so that it becomes smarter and smarter. It makes sense that you must be hitting a wall somewhere. Then the last part that I've been thinking about is, what if this is as good as it gets? We often are operating from this hypothesis that we're at the very beginning of this, incredible curve that's going to just go straight up for at least the next 10 years, if not the next 100 years.
Sure.
But what if we're actually at the top for the foreseeable future? For the next 20 years, it might get 2% better.
What if the bubble pops? What if we are at the peak of that? There's a fun graph that shows like how a new technology increases in terms of like exposure and everyone's really excited, and then it dips down into the trough disillusionment and eventually curves back out into like this more stable implementation and people using it. You're wondering, where are we on that graph? Are we still at the beginning of the upswing, or are we at the top of it, about to start screaming down into the abyss of people losing interest?
Well, I'm wondering whether we're at the top of it, but I'm also wondering, like, is it good enough? There is, in theory, this AI revolution that's coming / already happening. It's going to take over so many different jobs and professions, et cetera, et cetera. Is the tech good enough today to fulfill on that prophecy, or do we need it to get 10 times better before the average company is using it in place of at least one human that they previously employed on the average day, if that is the benchmark? And I think my hypothesis is that, yes, it probably is good enough.
For certain kinds of jobs or for certain people, right, in certain circumstances. That's that set of like capabilities that I keep mentioning.
I think it's getting really good at being mediocre at things. And I think a lot of people are maybe employees are mediocre at things. And if we stop approaching it from, I want the most brilliant insights and intellectual stimulus and work done of all time, and instead,
you need a guy that stocks shelves.
I want something that's kind of mediocre. Oh, can you call people when they haven't returned their library books and remind them? I don't want it to be an automated message, and remind them that their library book is overdue. Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
Right.
Probably as good as the average person who does that job. And again, stop making the goal total brilliance and make the goal utter mediocrity. And I wonder if you wouldn't be pleasantly surprised at the results.
I think a lot of companies are trying to do that. Some of them don't realize where that bar is, and they're trying to get rid of like highly trained editors or writers or so on. But I think there are more companies that are starting to make like an AI receptionist, or someone that's going to call you, remind you to bring in your laundry to the, not carpenter, the person that like stitches up your clothes.
Tailor? A tailor?
Tailor. Boy, words today, man. Yeah, your tailor doesn't need to stop tailoring and call you if they could just have an AI call and let you know that your suit's ready for pickup.
And I was just thinking, maybe that's exactly what Apple Intelligence is doing, targeting utter mediocrity. I tried to use it earlier this morning. I was writing a message, and I was like, this doesn't sound great. I pressed the make it more professional, but it was horrible. Like what it wrote. And I'm like, no, thank you. I'll write it myself.
Apple Intelligence, more like rotten Apple Intelligence.
But mediocrity, having mediocrity be the goal, opposed to utter brilliance. But all right, so let me take it back a few steps and ask you the question, which is, if this is as good as it's going to get over the next 20 years, do we have enough today from the underlying technology, not necessarily the applications of the technology, to have a revolution? Or is it just a small difference?
It doesn't need to be 10 times better. You mentioned this like aim for nailing mediocrity. And we don't need something that gets 100% on a set of math problems that would take humans days and weeks to do on their own. That sounds absolutely buck wild. Now, granted, if we can get to the point where a system can decompose a problem and really chew through each of these things in a way that I guess you could say is more even just mimicking human intelligence at like a larger and broader scale, that is very interesting, but there's a lot of room left for improvement on making an AI receptionist or making a robot that isn't necessarily smarter than we have now, but just figuring out more within the same like tier of intelligence. There's so much that can be done on the software and the optimizations and the hardware side to make the like robot dog that could stock shelves or something better and more efficient and cheaper. We don't have to have another, instead of 100,000 GPUs, 1 million GPUs training Llama 5. I don't think that's where we make the biggest improvements. I think there's a lot more to say. Here's the existing gigantic GPU cluster. Here's the existing set of data. If we figure out better, more efficient, more whatever architectures for these things, if we figure out how to split up the problem better and do sub agents spinning off and coming back, if we do LLMs as judges and panels of judges instead of just one answer coming out, you can get better results from all of these things. Why not continue down that path? There is a reason why we're still seeing a bunch of models come out darn near constantly at the 1 to 70 billion parameter size. It isn't all just 1.5 trillion parameter GPT-4s out there. It's stuff that can run on, if not average computers, beefy ones, and then there is plenty that's still coming out and making big progress on, it can fit on a phone, or even smaller. I've seen some cool stuff on the like 1 billion parameter. We're putting it on edge devices territory. Yes. Very recently. We are not done making improvements at a sustainable scale. It doesn't have to be something that is going to use all of Nevada's power through the 2020s over the course of a 6-month period to make one new thing.
So maybe they don't need to become self-aware.
No, I don't think so.
And not to be useful. Our podcast can continue forever, because once they become self-aware, we're stopping. We're done. We're gonna let the AI overlords take over. Mm-hmm. But so there may be an episode 52 in our future.
Depends on if the AI flips that switch between now and then.
Well, I'm sure you're all waiting with bated breath to see whether we continue or not, whether the AI becomes self-aware or not. And the best way to find out is to hit that little subscribe button. Maybe even leave us a comment. What's your insight? The question for the audience is, if the AI doesn't get any better than it is today, can it still create a revolution? Do we have enough ingredients, power today for that revolution, or do we need to see significant advancements before it's really going to change the world? And if you want to find those answers, just keep listening, because we're going to keep talking about it. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or really any podcast directory, whatever your favorite is. Just search for They Might Be Self-Aware, and we will pop up. That's going to be all for today, and until next time.
They might be self-aware.